What's better than this? Guys being dudes.
This podcast contains language and themes of an adult nature and is intended for a mature audience. Hello and welcome to episode 1 of a ludicrous season 3 of the Busted Barstools podcast. You are joined by the last bastion of research. It's the Doctor.
Howdy.
You are joined by the chief of controversy that is the coach, and myself. Sadly, Beric is MIA, so unfortunately he won't be joining us for this episode. How are we, gents? We all good? We enjoyed the break?
Always, please.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's good to be back though.
It is good. It is good.
Great to be back.
Doesn't feel like we had a break, does it at all?
No, but you all look. I have to say, lads, you look great. I might have a trip to the barbers, but
apart from not having a trip to the barbers,
for men who haven't had a haircut in a good 6 weeks at this stage, looking sprightly. Lot to get through this week, lads. So first up, it's all the happenings from the English Premier League as detailed by the Doctor.
Mm-hmm.
A quick word from the coaches, good, bad and ugly, followed by a quick word from our partners. I'll then have a deep dive into the quarterback position in the NFL and shortly we may have a few cheeky fan questions.
Yeah, cheeky fan questions.
Yeah, a few cheeky fan questions. So Doctor, you good to kick us all off?
Yeah, I sure am. So, Jesus, the last time we spoke, it would have been
just before the start of December. I think the last episode went out.
So what would have been match day 9, match day 10 in the Premier League.
Good Lord,
what a turn of events it has been. So we would have had a match day 10. Spurs were top, 21 points. Manchester United were 9th on 16 points. And just before that, at a time when one of our fellow podcasters said United don't finish top 10.
I'm going to stop you there.
So
just a quick word to all the. I just want to put out an apology, lads. Right? Okay. I want to apologise because over the Christmas break, I've got a lot. I meant to kick off the show with this, actually, to be honest with you. And over Christmas, I've got a lot of stick and heat off numerous sources about a comment I made about Manchester United not finishing in the top 10. I want to apologise. I made a mistake. It was meant to be Arsenal. It was the wrong colour, the wrong shirt. But look, credit to.
Well, if you go back and listen to the conversation, it was strictly about Ole.
Credit to the Manchester United team. Ole, he's at the wheel. Look, I'm happy for Ole. He's a likeable character. And just congratulations on to Manchester, the city of Manchester, I should say, on winning the Premier League trophy back.
Nice compliment.
Wouldn't rule Leicester.
Sorry, Doctor. Sorry to interrupt there, but sorry.
The city of Manchester. But Jesus, yeah, what a massive turnaround, like, in the last couple of weeks since before Christmas. It's been insane. So as you can see, anyone who knows the Premier League table or have watched it is, from today, Man United sitting pretty in top spot on 40 points. Last time they lost the game was I think that 1-0 at Old Trafford against Arsenal, if I'm not mistaken.
Think so,
in the league.
Which, I mean, this turnaround as well, this week we're heading into is match week 20.
Yeah.
So it's happening in the space of 9.
Yeah.
Not every club has got 9 games either, with all the COVID stoppages and stuff.
Yeah, true. Since then, Slavan Bilic got the boo. I think over the Christmas period, Big Sam came in. Still in the bottom half of the table, but he'd be looking to do what he always does and save a club from relegation. We'll have to, I suppose, wait and see. 6 points from safety, but we'll have to wait and see what happens over the next couple of weeks. Man City have absolutely found their form. I mean, they were kind of lagging just around fucking top 6. Where were they? They were 11th on match day 10, and now they're up to 2nd. So certainly the form team alongside.
The scary thing about City is they don't seem to have come out of second gear yet either.
We were very lucky yesterday too.
That's true. Yeah, until he brought the big ones on, as they say. Jesus. Like, what's gone on there with Liverpool? Is it their injuries?
See, a lot
have
of
they
people
lost their spark? Are they kind of worn
I have
out
two concepts.
from their,
I have two
their
concepts,
consistency and their high octane play over the last 2 or 3 seasons that brought a Champions League and a Premier League?
Go on, Sass, because I know one. I know what one of them is, but go on, yeah.
I tend to lean towards what the doctor just said there because it's a poor example, but we've seen it with Spurs under Pochettino. The final season, the players were just gone, and I don't know if maybe it's 2 or 3 signings, like squad players, not a marquee name, over the next few days, just to bring fresh legs into the squad and give that little bit of a boost. The other concept I have is I just wonder if all of Jurgen Klopp's complaints to the media and stuff like that, if it's filtered down into the psyche of the players. Like, are they, like, unbeknownst to themselves thinking, do you know what, actually we are playing too many games, actually do you know what, we are tired, actually do you know what, we are at a risk of injury, actually. And that's kind of where I swing. It's good to see Virgil van Dijk was back kicking the ball around over the weekend. I think it was footage up on social media, so it'd be a huge one to get back.
It's a weird one because it seems as though, like, so obviously Van Dijk's out injured and Diogo Jota as well, who had seemed to be the kind of the flux capacitor to things that were going to happen and had that extra energy. So it was okay if 1 or 2 of the front 3 was in poor form because he was able to come in, and that's the joy of having, you know, depth there. But obviously he's gone and the 3 lads are out of form, you know. So that's one side. And I know a lot of people are saying, oh, well, you know, when Van Dijk's in the team, the points average goes up because you can play higher up the pitch and whatever. But all the games they've played in the last, you know, since that Palace 7-0 win, they're games that were easily won. They just couldn't put the ball in the goal. Like, they've had countless attempts on goal. I think, was there a stat here tonight? I think is it 96 attempts
20
on goal? Oh, sorry, 20 in that game.
Yeah.
Sorry, but since the Palace game, they've had, I think it's 96 attempts on goal with 1 goal. Like,
and I mean, Bleacher Report did it up. They did they basically did all the games where Liverpool haven't scored, if that makes sense. And the last run of, is it 4 games or I can't remember, but they had the total number of shots, and the total number of shots on target, they're very low in terms of shot accuracy as well. And I do think it's fatigue because, like, Trent, Andy Robertson, they've been so, like, they're not their normal selves. Like, it's not, like, everyone's banging on about the front 3 not working, but Mo Salah is still top goal scorer in the Premiership this season. So it's like they've hit a wall. And that's why I tend to lean towards the fatigue issue.
Yeah, no, I agree, the fatigue issue. The problem, the thing about Trent is, and someone sent me an article the other day about how Trent had COVID and it wasn't really put out there and all that sort of stuff. COVID, whatever it might do to your fatigue, like, Trent's putting in 2 games in a row, he's put the highest amount, he's taken the record for highest amount of crosses into a box. But there's nowhere in there. You know, like, I think it was 38 crosses one of the nights, and I think one of them was connected with. Like, that, what it tells me is Klopp, I'm a Liverpool fan, and you know, as much as I love Klopp, we're struggling for a plan B big time. There doesn't seem to be a plan B, because even when Henderson was playing in the middle, he was getting to an angle to try and put balls into the box for crosses, but we don't have a Charlie Austin or a someone like that in the box to meet crosses. We're a different type of team, and as I love Thiago, he's played great against 10 men at Chelsea, and then the following game I think it might have been Leeds or something like that. It's kind of a mid-table team. Since then he hasn't done it, and he's picked up stupid yellow cards. You know, he's not been allowed to dictate the play because he's not getting, you know, he doesn't have that kind of, Fabinho's playing centre half, he's not playing in the defensive midfield role, so maybe that's something.
On Thiago, I think he is a fantastic player, but I think he forces Liverpool to play in a different style that I don't think is to the betterment of the rest of the players in the squad.
I think he's slowing down the play a little bit. Although his passes are right, he is slowing down the play, and the typical play that Liverpool have been used to over the last 2 years. But you both have points in the whole kind of fatigue thing, because if you look at Pep and every other club he's been at, it's kind of been 2-year stints of playing at that intensity that he had. Yeah. And I think you're seeing something similar now. And obviously City is the longest time Pep spent at a club, but whatever happened to City last year, I think that was their lull, and he's probably changed his plan a little bit, and now he's going again for another 2-year, you know, stint, if you like. So it was like a rest season or a furlough season or whatever you want to call it. Yeah.
Again, their squad size is a huge factor too as well. So,
and then this whole thing with Liverpool and not having money, and I some fans are giving out about it, but it's easier to see if you look at it. I know, Sass, you have a big kind of interest in the business and the politics and all that sort of stuff. But if you look at the likes of City and Chelsea, this is money that doesn't run out. But United, Liverpool, American money, there's only so much of it. It's hard-earned money, if that makes sense, as opposed to these Eastern, that's that's my theory.
Well, it's Arab state government money effectively, so it is actually endless. It's not practically endless. It is endless.
I think you see that from the Thiago deal as well, don't you? Like 5 million up front to pay off over, the next 5 years.
See, the thing too as well with Liverpool is John Henry made his name really with the Boston Red Sox, and how the Boston Red Sox under John Henry broke the curse of Gambino, which was the Boston Red Sox hadn't won a title in I think 100 years since they traded Babe Ruth, and that's where the curse of Gambino comes from, was implementing the model adapted by Billy Bean in Oakland with Moneyball, and that's who Billy Bean meets at the end. For people who don't know, is John Henry. He meets at the very end. He goes to Fenway Park and meets him. So outside of Van Dijk, a lot of Liverpool signings over the last 5 years have been shrewd acquisitions. Actually,
and what you're saying complements kind of what's going on at the moment, because we all know that Klopp has been going looking for a centre half. But if you look at it analytically, we're not conceding. It's very rare Liverpool are conceding. So why would I get a centre half? In John W. Henry's head, he's not going to sign a player. He's not going to get the money. But if he was to, he's probably thinking, well, we're not scoring goals, so we need someone to score goals. If you look at it in that respect, do you know what I mean? Numbers, as a numbers game. But look, it's interesting. Tonight, I know we're recording slightly earlier than usual, so tonight Liverpool face Manchester United in the FA Cup, and it's going to be a big story, because the way Liverpool are going, they probably need to win that game, whereas they beat United last weekend. It's probably not as important. Both,
I'd actually think counterintuitively. Okay. I think Liverpool could do with less fixtures. So dropping out the cup now, while you'll get stick from the United fans for the week.
Do you not think it's the same situation for United?
I think it's the same situation for both. I mean, considering you have this, you have the Premier League. They return to European action as well then in mid-February. So that's more and they're those last 32 and last 16. They're not single fixtures. They're two-legged
double headers.
Are they back to two?
They're back to 2 legs, aren't they?
Yeah. Well, the reason I'd say it's more important for Liverpool is because of the accumulation of fixtures over the last number of years versus United, who Europa League. Do you know that sort of way?
When they won was it the year they won the Champions League? They actually got knocked out by Wolves in the third round, didn't they? So they kind of, I could say, that probably gave them a hand in terms of their fixture list, or fixture congestion, if you want to call it. May had a contributing factor. We don't know.
And look, the FA Cup is not what it was worth.
It's not. No.
It's a poor competition. It's closer to the League Cup than it is to Premier League or Champions League. So,
I know we've just spent a little bit on Liverpool, but just two things that have popped up in the last little while that I think in the Premier League have been great. Number one, the resurgence of David Moyes. I think it's been fantastic for West Ham. It's been incredible.
He's doing a phenomenal job.
What he's done there has been nothing short of a miracle, I would have thought. Because I think he took them over.
I was just about to say that, actually, given how bizarre it is.
16 points. He took them over, possibly.
It's since he got COVID, isn't it? Really?
Yeah.
We had the joke about he's off
and they won them.
And then they kept.
And the joke was, how can he come back? And he came back and he just kept going.
It's been brilliant. But the other part of that is the transfer of Spurs training pitch to Leeds United's Ellen Road.
Interesting. Yeah.
It seems to have been a massive fallout and breakdown with Bielsa and the Leeds owners over that. So I don't know how that'll play out for the rest of the season, but I think Bielsa, from what I've read on Twitter streams and stuff like that, was, if this doesn't happen, I'm going. So it's the first time I've ever seen a transfer like that. I think it was 500,000, 440 something in that region, to get the pitch transferred up. It'll be interesting to see how it holds up for the rest of the season.
Yeah,
I think we might just. We've spent a good bit of time, so we might wrap this up. I think just before we do finish on the Premier League, it's been one of the better seasons, I think.
Yeah.
You look at Leicester flying, you look at Villa flying. There's so many teams having great seasons.
Yeah, I'd say give it up to about match day 25, match day 26. It'll be a 3-4 horse race, and then we'll see what happens from there. But what I will say is, if you had said at the start of the season West Ham United and Aston Villa are pushing for a place in Europe, you'd have been laughed at. But look what they're doing.
Likewise, if you said about Sheffield United,
yeah.
But
Yeah, so
versus this year,
it's fair play to them. But I think the kind of losers of the season, if you want to call it that, would be so far is Chelsea. 220 million on transfers, and they're kind of languishing there around mid-table. So Lampard's under pressure. But like what they said about Ollie last season, give him time. I think it was Keane who was saying after the Liverpool match, give him another year and see whereabouts he is. I know he's brought Man United to the top of the table, so
that's historically an issue with Chelsea, though.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I think I think with a lot of people, when Solskjaer first got appointed, people were like, that was an emotional decision. It wasn't rational. They didn't really think that through. Could it be the same with Lampard? Probably. I mean, he had one full season with Derby County and brought them to the playoffs. Didn't get promoted, and then he's now in his second season as Chelsea manager. So yeah, we'll see what happens with them over the next couple of games. But yeah, an interesting and exciting season thus far. So we'll see what happens.
Okay, so I suppose without much further ado, it's the coach's good, bad, and the ugly.
Take it away.
So, good. So I suppose what I've looked at is over the last few weeks rather than, I suppose, the week, because we obviously missed a little while. So the good this week, the NBA is back, and there are so many subplots and stories to follow. I think we obviously did the decision before Christmas, and since then I've had a few people ask, predominantly friends, how can someone follow NBA? Because there's just so much going on. It's not like on a Saturday you can sit down and watch Match of the Day with football. Every game is very similar in terms of there's lots of points scored, there's lots of defending, there's lots of good little pieces. So my best explanation was you kind of have to follow a storyline or a team to get your most out of your season, I think.
Yeah.
So
it's not like NFL Red Zone of a Sunday where if you plank yourself down for 3 hours, you're going to get.
Yeah, it's not league. when you don't kind of focus on something. It's very hard to follow because there's so much going on every single night of the week. But yeah, so a few of the storylines that popped up. Obviously, the Ball brothers. I think I said in the podcast before Christmas that Melo was going to light it up. For those who don't know, LaMelo Ball, obviously, third choice in the draft, was he?
Dropped third, yeah.
So he's picked and he's gone to the Charlotte Hornets. Obviously, older brother Lonzo Ball is at the Pelicans, who seems to have been really, really poorly performing there. And I suppose possibly playing for a way out. Looks possibly to go to the Clippers or the Knicks, I would say, in the close season. But there's a long way to play before then. But I have to say, LaMelo has been a breath of fresh air in Charlotte. I think he's been excellent for the minutes he's played. I think he's had 2 triple doubles. He's been good, and it's exciting. So there's one storyline if you're looking to watch it. The second and probably the one getting the most media at the moment is the Brooklyn Nets, obviously. So I know Saf will have a big opinion on this, but James Harden, Kevin Durant, and Kyrie Irving. Only God knows what's going on there with Kyrie Irving. He came back. He's played 2 games now back, I think, in the last.
Lost both to the Cavs.
Both to the Cavs. I don't know what that means for the organisation. Harden has lost a lot of weight in a week. Well, sorry, it's probably 2 weeks now to 3 weeks.
And then put it back on. He just keeps.
I think he probably wears a bodysuit. Possibly, I'm not too sure. It fluctuates that much. And then the one that I'm most interested in is the on-off Celtics. They're lit up for I think 4 or 5 days in a row. They get wins and then they falter again. Tatum's in, Tatum's out. And the biggest one for them this weekend is the Lakers. They've got the Lakers coming up, so that's a big one. So they're the kind of 3 storylines I've been following over the winter period. So it's great the NBA is back. It's good. Any thoughts on that, Sas?
Yeah, well, I suppose there's loads of stories. I think the NBA, and if you follow us on Instagram, you'll notice that like I put up the scores every morning. You will also notice there's an awful lot of postponed games. These are COVID games. The NBA obviously isn't operating in the bubble, so it's something to keep an eye on is the COVID situation in the NBA, because with the amount of games they play each week, I think there's a real scope for players, say, playing 3 away games out of the 4 games 1 week. There's a real scope for spread of the virus, so it's interesting. In terms of what you're touching on, the Celtics, it would be kind of a known thing in the NBA that the season doesn't start until after the All-Star weekend, which is February. So for people who are looking to get in and still get interested, don't pay too much attention to the results. Obviously, you can be out of it by All-Star weekend, but I wouldn't judge anyone that's in and around the 8 playoff spots in each conference. Is generally in with a shout, and you kind of it heats up after, I think it's the first weekend, it might be the second weekend in February. Try not to clash with the Super Bowl. Just one. You took the point out of my head. Actually, sorry.
Will the All-Star weekend still happen in February? Was my question. Do you think with the games postponed and all that sort of stuff?
No, it's cancelled, but they're still having an All-Star weekend, and they're still having a weekend off, and they're still having the votes. Okay. So you're still voting for your Western and Eastern team, but there won't be a physical slam dunk contest. There won't be a 3-point contest.
And the part B of that, do we know yet at this time what happened to the postponed games?
They try and fit them back in, I think.
Okay. Because there's as you said, there is a few building up now where I think the Celtics might have 2 or possibly 3.
Do you reckon that what's kind of the percentage of COVID games compared to games that are going ahead, and is it steady or has it increased week on week?
I would say it's increased. I'd say the first week or two I was putting up, there was maybe 1, maybe 2 a week. I'd say we're now at the stage where there's 1, maybe 2 a day.
Do you reckon now that America has a new president who's actually going to take COVID seriously, that there might be a possibility of a cancelled or delayed season, or do you reckon they might postpone it for a number of weeks and operate it in a bubble like they done in, was it Disneyland or Disney World or whatever?
Disneyland. The issue with the bubble is it operated on a much smaller scale, as in they literally, I think they had 4 teams that weren't in the playoff spots that had an opportunity. So they dropped from 30 teams to 20 teams. I don't think they can actually facilitate 30 teams, 30 backroom staffs, and play all the games in the same arena and have a decent schedule in Disneyland with 30 teams. I think it was a viable option for the 20, but I don't think it's a viable option.
In hindsight, for one season, they possibly should have looked at just keeping the regionalised. Like, should the Celtics be playing the Lakers? Should the Celtics, they probably could have used one arena within that region. So, obviously the Celtics they have Philadelphia, they have whatever. Possibly could have looked at it, something like that.
As in conference bubbles as such type thing, so...
Maybe.
So like keep it centralised to a state or a city, but use multiple venues.
But the interesting thing you said there, Brian, was about the new president and all that sort of stuff. I don't know if people watched Dana White last night, and he said that one of the questions was, when do you plan to come back to Abu Dhabi? And he kind of said, well, look, with the new inauguration and the new president and all that sort of stuff, we don't know yet, because the states are now trying to implement the quarantine as well. So they don't know how that's going to affect UFC, and obviously UFC have to supply ESPN and Disney with, I think it's 42 live events a year, so we are probably looking at them going back to the Apex or somewhere else in Florida maybe or whatever, and getting fights done. But yeah, like I can see what you mean about the travel thing. To move on to the bad, sorry to cut anyone short, but with the bad, so Irish international sports scene, we've got rugby that doesn't seem to be going anywhere in a hurry. Obviously, we've got Paul O'Connell just in as forwards coach with the international team. We don't seem to know who, our first 2 or 3 scrum halves are. Who's coming in after Johnny Sexton if he gets injured? There's lots of questions to be asked. And coming into a Six Nations that we still aren't 100% that's going to happen. Because we know the women's one is obviously been called off already. Mm-hmm. The men's seems to have gone ahead, but I would be reserved on that just for the moment, because I know there's problems in France, and the French are looking at, or the French government are looking at, France not competing possibly. With football, we have staff dropping left, right and centre from the FAI. We've had the departure of Damien Duff, obviously, Alan Kelly, the goalkeeping coach, And we've also actually had Andy Reid fall from the 18s, which is obviously for another role, so it's a different kind of situation there. We've dropped from 21st to 46th in the nation's rankings, which doesn't help our European standings for our League of Ireland teams qualifying for Europe, nor does it help our underage teams like 21s and stuff like that on the international scene. And then finally, which you touched on a little bit earlier on, our Olympics is in question. So for the Irish sports scene, although we're getting loads and loads of sports as you know, international sports, it's not looking good for our own international scene and national scene, I suppose, as well. Thoughts?
Yeah, interesting.
Is it a depressing time to be an Irish
bringing
sports
everyone
fan?
down.
Yeah.
Probably
Yes.
is. Likely, given possible extension of the restrictions as well, probably going to have to wait an awful lot longer for the National Leagues to return as well. So any staunch Ga men and women will be a little bit disappointed by that. It hasn't obviously been confirmed, but I can imagine what's been predicted and what's been speculated, it will be pushed back, which means the championship will then be pushed back unless they want to cut the league or diminish the league.
Yeah.
So it is probably a stressing time to be an Irish sports fan. But I mean, I've kind of always not a huge fan of international sport during this window. Huge issue. Say if you're just an association football fan. We had European Nations weekends, which
disrupted everything. Yeah.
I'd argue Mickey Mouse competition, and your stars came back with it with COVID. Ronaldo came back, Salah came back. Do you know, like, I think stuff has to be sacrificed. Another thing that you didn't just mention just to bring in is the Lion Store now, which they're potentially looking at having in Dublin in Croke Park, which I don't understand the logic, if I'm honest. It's I think you have to seriously say, look, international sport needs to take a backward step. We'll keep domestic going so your athletes are still training and still have something to work towards.
Would you include Six Nations in that? Like, again, I'm coming back to the NBA bubble thing. I think if we're trying to get sports up and running, why not just move the Six Nations to London, say, and just play it all over 6 to 8 weeks?
Yeah, I'd argue against even London. I'd say just put it in the Midlands, put it somewhere in the middle of England, where you could arguably have it. Like, London is just such a densely populated area; it's very hard for your players to go shop. So
somewhere like,
because they will need to
George's
leave.
Park or something like that, and just play them.
Yeah. I'd be all for it. And to be honest with you, I don't think it's quite a scary concept. But the reason the Six Nations I don't think will be cancelled is it's one of the most profitable tournaments in world sport. So I don't think they can afford. The unions are crying for money at present, and one of the reasons why they're pushing to have the Lion Store here is because it will have a knock-on effect on the summer tours the following season if they were to push it back a year. Most importantly, Wales, who are due to play South Africa, so they will be down a summer tour as well. So and they're huge money generators for the union. So yeah, look, I think
Actually,
something's going to have to
bode
give.
well for the South African teams before Christmas that have just joined the Pro 14.
This Rainbow Cup,
Concept is good,
disaster.
but the timing is bad.
Yeah, timing is
and just the last point, because I know I'm running over time slightly. The ugly. I've been on this before we ended last season. Unfortunately, Berwick isn't here to kind of comment on this, but Neil Lennon is still in the Celtic hot seat, despite fan disgruntlement and some decisions made over the last few weeks, which were bizarre to say the least. Trip to Dubai obviously being one of them. Granted, that's a club outing, but literally, the buck stops with the manager. The buck needs to stop with the manager. His interview then last week about the media picking them out or bullying them, I think is way off the charts. And for me now, I feel like the longer Neil Lennon stays in that seat, the more respect he's losing. Had he stepped out maybe in November, December, when he knew things were going pear-shaped, he probably would have stepped away with a little bit of dignity. Whereas now, I think he's losing all dignity and he'll struggle to get another job in club football. I think international football will come easier to him. So we've got Rafa this morning being gone into bookies' favourites. We've Eddie Howe, who I think is the perfect chance for him to rebuild himself, similar to what Roger's done.
It's great.
But the Roy Keane one just doesn't seem to go away.
No.
Yes.
Couple of points on that, if I may. one, I think after that interview, that press conference, I think it's when as opposed to if. I don't think he's in a state of mind where he's willing to step down, but I do think he will be forcibly removed, to put it lightly. On Eddie Howe, I actually don't think Eddie Howe needs to rebuild his reputation. I think he has a good reputation for what he did in Bournemouth. He just took time out, wasn't it? Isn't that he took time out as opposed to being sacked. But the one thing I would say is, with regards to Neil Lennon, and I know you're saying he might struggle to get a Celtic job. A year is a long time in football. And a lot of people would have said that about Big Sam after getting sacked with the England job. And
Mick McCarthy in Cyprus.
Mick McCarthy, back at Cardiff now. So he mightn't get one next month, but I wouldn't say his club career is finished with.
The Eddie Howe one's a funny one, because you say that he doesn't need to rebuild, which I agree with. I think Eddie is a fantastic coach. And I say coach because I don't think he's a coach. He's a real coach. He is like Klopp. He's like Rodgers. He's like all these. But did Rodgers need to rebuild when he went to Celtic? Or did it just enhance his reputation because he won? Because he'd left Liverpool kind of at a high. Like you wouldn't say he was a failure at Liverpool, I don't think.
You wouldn't, but I think a lot of it's to do with matching expectations, and I don't think he matched the expectations of Liverpool fans. That's not fair to say. I don't think he did a bad job, but I think a lot of Liverpool fans weren't happy with him. If I remember correctly,
he was a breath of fresh air given what we had before then with Hodgson, Kenny, and don't get me wrong, Hodgson and Kenny are lovely gentlemen, but they weren't to cut out for that level. But yeah, Doc, any thoughts on the Celtic situation? Particularly the points with the lads, maybe.
With the lads,
points with the lads when they were in Dubai.
Oh, when they were in Dubai, yeah, I think a point was made that it was signed off on by the Scottish government, which is twice, which is fair enough. But I think, given the situation, which at the time had kind of worsened in terms of the spread of the virus, they probably should have knocked it on the head.
Yeah, it's a bit of knowing your
and
audience,
decided not to go.
Yeah.
In terms of Lennon still being in the job, he only has 6 wins in the last 21 games or something like that. I think I read the other day. I would say, yeah, I would say time to go. In terms of a replacement, I know Rafa's been linked with the job. It's been said he's the bookie's favourite. I don't know if it's the type of job that he himself would go with. I think he'd be probably looking at, like a lot of people were saying, going back to Newcastle. If Steve Bruce gets the sack. I just don't think... Now, I could be wrong. He could be signing a contract as we speak. But I just don't think it's his kind of calibre of club.
The one thing...
But, having said that, I think if he does manage to sign, they're obviously going to be paying him a lot of money. They'll obviously have their sights set on a 3 or 5 year strategy where they get back to the top, where they're qualifying for the Champions League, where they'll get out of the group stage kind of thing. But Celtic need to they need to buy players, and they need to be spending decent money, and it's the one thing that they never really done. Now, they've had good players come through the academy, and some of the boys that they have done, but they really need, if they want to do well in Europe, they need to be buying in decent players.
I think they've signed decent players without spending the money, like Mark Heap, like say Scott Sinclair at the time when he came in, and one or two like that. The interesting thing is though,
Victor Wanyama, Virgil van
Dijk, but it's very hard for Celtic to sign players with no fans in the ground. You have to remember, they don't have a Premier League deal, like a TV deal. And I know we're way over now, but I don't think Lennon will be in that job if there was fans in the ground.
Yeah, probably not.
And then the one thing about Rafa is, and I'll finish on this, it'll be incredibly interesting to see next season Rafa Benitez managing Celtic coming up against Stevie G managing Rangers. Yeah.
That's true, yeah.
Sass?
Yes, I suppose it's a wait and see scenario.
Well, why don't we take a quick word and we'll return after a word from our sponsors. Hey everyone, it's the Sasquatch here from the Busted Barstools podcast. This episode is produced in partnership with our friends, The Square Ball, located just off Marion Square. Doing it rough at this moment in time with the pandemic, so make sure to give them a follow on Instagram, give them a like, give them a share, and hopefully someday soon we'll all be able to get back in for barbecue, pints and sport. Hello and welcome back for the second part of episode 1, season 3. It's hard to believe we haven't been shut down as of yet. I suppose I'll kick into my segment, and then we've a few fan questions to get to, so we'll power through them as well. I do apologise, as I'm conscious we've a wide variety of sports fans that do listen to this podcast and do follow us, and there's been a lot of NFL coverage of late, but it is the business end of the season, so I had to get into it. We are recording Sunday afternoon time, likely be out maybe Monday, so by the time this hits the airways we'll know our Super Bowl matchup, so I'm not going to make any bold predictions to be covered to have egg on my face within 24 hours. I don't mind doing it with 40 hours, but 24 hours is a bit too short notice. Okay, so basically this week there's loads of narratives going on in the NFL at the minute, but we have the future of the AFC and nay the NFL with Allen versus Mahomes. But I'm more interested this week in Brady versus Rodgers and what is the GOAT debate. Fun little stat for you, which is very topical at present. But for myself, as a self-confessed Brady hater, Brady's 20 seasons, he's made 9 Super Bowls. This is now season 21, which he hasn't completed, but he could make 10 Super Bowls. But let's just say 20 seasons, 9 Super Bowls. Steph Curry last night overtook Reggie Miller as the second all-time perimeter shooter. He has a career shooting percentage beyond the arc at 43.3%, which would mean that it's more likely Tom Brady will make a Super Bowl at 45% than Steph Curry will make a 3-point shot. So I do have to give the man credit where he's due. But basically, the whole Brady versus Rodgers thing got me thinking. And got me thinking about the whole quarterback dynamic as a position. It's, I'd say arguably for argument's sake, but in my mind it's not. It is the most influential position in any field sport. As in, there's no way you look at a Premiership preview and you go, well, Man United don't have a decent left back. There's no way they can compete for the Premiership. There's no one position in any other sport that's so crucial to it than the quarterback position. It's the best paid position, it's the most crucial position, yet it's the position with the least amount of control in terms of a player's individual career. So where you draft tends to be where you play. I know obviously there's kind of a bit going on at the minute with Deshaun Watson, but that's more, seems to be more sinister issues within the franchise and a bit incompetence basically. But largely speaking, where a quarterback is drafted is where they play for the season, for their career. We also had 2 high profile retirees this season. So we've had, well, Drew Brees is yet to be confirmed, but we had Philip Rivers. And if you listen to any of the American talk shows, like your Congo Word, the hot topic this week has been, is Philip Rivers a Hall of Famer? So we've done some digging around and kind of had a bit of a golden patch there between 2000 and 2005 in the NFL. 2000 Brady was drafted, he's had 6 rings. 2001 Drew Brees, 1 ring, but incredibly influential to that city of New Orleans. 2004 Eli Manning, 2 rings, Ben Roethlisberger, 2 rings, and Philip Rivers, no rings. And then in 2005 you had Alex Smith drafted, but you also had Aaron Rodgers. He's 1 ring and a bit of time left. If we look at the numbers in terms of all-time yards, it's Brady, Brees, Peyton Manning, Brett Favre, and number 5 is Philip Rivers. If we look at completions, it's Brees, Brady, Brett Favre, Peyton Manning, and Philip Rivers again at 5. And if we look at all-time TDs, it's Brady, Brees, Peyton Manning, Brett Favre, and Philip Rivers. So Philip Rivers has never won a ring, and the discussion has basically been that he's not a Hall of Famer because he's never taken his team through the playoffs and to the finals. But if we look at the numbers, he's top 5 in 3 of the
I was
major
going to say,
statistics
yeah,
for
and
quarterbacks.
Rodgers
So,
isn't even in there in most of them.
yeah, now Rodgers still has a bit of time. He's 37, so you'd argue
That's
he has 4 or
incredible.
5
He's
years
a bit of
left.
time. He's 37.
Well, that's if you look at any of these players, if you
Yeah.
look at Breeze, not Brady, but Peyton Manning, Brett Favre, they all started to excel in their career when they reached 30. Now that's getting young in the NFL. But I suppose the question I wanted to ask you, and this is a general question because we're not all just NFL fans, are we too focused on titles, championships, etc., when celebrating sport and prowess?
This is a funny one because, again, Berwick's not here to argue this one with me. Thank God. But if you look at someone like Steven Gerrard, who
How did I know that was the first athlete that we mentioned? I'd be like, if the coach gets in first, it's gonna be, look at Steven Gerrard.
but it's like, where do you stop?
I'm being facetious.
Where do you stop with, you know, how do you put it? Loyalty versus championship wins.
He's actually a good player.
Or trophies or whatever. So, like, I'd flip it ever so slightly. Like, would you prefer to see Rodgers win the Super Bowl this season with Brady not winning with Tampa, right? But he has that legendary status with the Patriots. Like, that's a feel-good story. Or would you prefer Tom Brady to go and win it with the Bucks and go, look, I can do it with anyone? Do you know what I'm saying there?
I want Rodgers to win because I love Aaron Rodgers as a quarterback. I think he's one of the most talented. Like, I know I'd say Tom Brady's a better winner, but I'd say Aaron Rodgers is the better player. I think it's kind of a bit of the Jordan LeBron debate.
Is it though? But, like, because you named numbers there and all. Like, can Rodgers even be in that conversation?
Yeah, he's like 7 or 8 kind of on most of those statistics. I think he might be 10 on TDs.
The thing I've noticed as a follower of NFL and maybe not a fan would be that Rodgers seems to have done it with whatever's been. Sorry, I say seem to have done it, but stuck it out with one of the better players with no matter what has been put around him. Whereas Brady has always had outlets.
Yeah, look, and I think this year's been a poor year for Bill Belichick. It's kind of it's made it look as if it was all Brady. I don't believe for a minute that it was all Brady. I just think, and he said it himself, Bill Belichick, like, they are suffering now for winning all those championships.
Because they can't recruit.
Can't recruit. They've no cap space or anything like that, and they had a number of players drop out this year because of COVID. They actually were one of the worst impacted because players had high risk relatives and stuff like that, or high risk issues.
Do you read into that though? Do you read into it going, well, we don't have Tom, and it's the cold, and maybe I'm not going to play this year. Hey, Granny, how you feeling?
But I mean, I suppose it's a thing that's transferable across all sports. I suppose as well. It's kind of it's something I'd be interested on. Maybe your take, the doctor. Would you? How would you feel? Do you think in sport in general we put too much power or like too much importance on actual titles as opposed to
yes we do. Definitely, yeah. It's like
I'll tell you what it's like.
It's like we say just a small example, like they're during the week. What day is it today? Sunday. I think it was a Thursday or Friday. The athletics fella Jerry Kiernan passed away.
Yeah,
and there's been so much media surrounding him, saying how great an athlete and stuff he was, and like he ran he ran in the Olympics that John Tracy ran in. John Tracy came away with a medal. No, I didn't read hugely into it, but I think it was more so around the fact that your man was such a top bloke.
Yeah.
Like a really
I think that
nice
was the
bloke
general
and
consensus.
a good coach, and you know he kind of had this whole sportsman leadership vibe about him, but he wasn't a serial winner as such.
Unfortunately,
so that kind of thing
highly influential in a number of
Irish
athletes as a primary school teacher as well. I think he was Madigan's old primary school teacher.
Nice doesn't win you trophies though.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you, probably a better way to look at it is if you look at Dublin over the last 10, 15 years and trophies, and not to take the piss, but there's athletes playing GAA that should probably be like they're not going to win championships. They're not. It's just not going to happen. But should probably be looked upon as incredible athletes.
I get you.
Do you know what I'm saying?
So the argument would be from your county. I would say Matty Ford was arguably one of the most gifted footballers we've seen in his generation, but because he played for Wexford, he probably didn't get the titles that.
Yeah, same with Declan Brown of Tipperary.
Yeah,
zero success, absolutely amazing footballer. I think he is the top scorer for Tipperary.
But I suppose
there was one season. I think they were like the third round of the qualifiers, the back door, and he still won an All-Star that year. Never happens.
See the way in Ireland, obviously we've got All-Stars and Premier League, got Team of the Year and all that sort of stuff, and we do have it in the NFL as well. But just out of interest, in terms of getting recognition, and Sassy, you'll probably know more about the answer. How many times has the winner of the Super Bowl, has the QB been MVP or in the Team of the Year or whatever? Like, does it always correlate, or does it ever that Tom Brady won and Aaron Rodgers got the MVP or in the QB of the Year or whatever?
Well, the argument across American sports is the MVP is a regular season award,
right? So
they don't give it out until the playoffs are done, but they say it's a regular season award. Yeah, and then the playoffs do obviously factor into it subconsciously, but the argument is it's a regular season award. No, there's no real. Generally speaking, with these awards, and you know from the NBA, and as such, they don't like to give it to the same person too often. They don't like to admit that.
Unless it's LeBron.
They have a generational.
Unless it's LeBron.
Well, he's only had 4 MVPs across an 18-year career.
Yeah.
Like, that's what I'm saying. They don't like to, like, I would say it's highly unlikely, no matter how well he plays, that Giannis will win it this year, because that would be 3 in a row. It's the similar thing in the NFL, and it's similar. Rugby league is Man of Steel. Australia's the Daily M. You know, the player of the year for Everton. Now, I think the only awards to actually look at are stats awards, so top goal scorer, etc., top point scorer, that type of thing. Look, it's a way of maybe giving, like, recognizing players who don't have a chance, basically, because of where they're at. Well, I had a follow-up question, but I think he's kind of would agree anyway. It was basically, prior to 2017, the race was between Montana and Brady. At the time, Bo had 4 Super Bowl rings, but Terry Bradshaw also had 4, and was always omitted from the discussion. So I think the question I was going to ask was, are titles only valid when they suit a narrative? As in LeBron and Jordan. Is it just, like, a lot of people go, well, Jordan has rings. Has 6 rings versus 4, or if someone, like, say if someone wanted to make the argument that Paul, I'm not, as an Arsenal fan, I'm definitely not saying this, but that Paul Scholes is a better footballer than Steven Gerrard.
Because he's got more trophies.
Is it more a thing of suiting people's arguments?
It seems to be, particularly in Irish culture, but it seems it does seem to be like that, doesn't it? And do we overemphasize? It's hard to tell. It's very hard. I think you've hit the nail on the head. It's to suit someone's narrative.
Yeah, it seems to be a fine balance, doesn't it? I mean, like, it's when it gets to the fine lines. Like, obviously, if you look at, say, if you were looking at, say, United versus a Liverpool player, you'd never say, well, look how many Premiership titles Wes Brown has.
Yeah.
You know, I think it's when it gets narrow and it gets cost for time.
I think a big one for Liverpool players was back in the day, and when I was in school. Yeah, but Michael Owen has a Ballon d'Or. Do you know? It's
one of those never-ending arguments, isn't it?
Yeah, like Michael Owen never won a Champions League or a Premier League. Sorry, at Liverpool, but he has a Ballon d'Or. So, but it probably comes back in that time. I can't remember what year it was. It was probably about 2000. I think he might have won the Ballon d'Or. But that, at least that's personal recognition.
Yeah, do you know what I mean?
And it suits the narrative of a Liverpool fan. Whereas you could compare him that year with, I don't know who was up front then, Cole and Yorkie.
Well, geez, they were banging in the goal too as well. That's a great debate.
Yeah. Jeez, but yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head with the narrative suggestion there.
That so if we're comparing players, we should be admitting titles.
Yeah, but there's so many subplots because you just go into look at their personal titles versus their team's titles.
That's what I'm saying. Or is it
like is Gerrard?
I know.
Yeah.
I hate to bring up the NFL again, obviously, because I did want this to be more centered. But a lot of people are fighting for Eli Manning to win the to be a Hall of Famer, and stats wise, he's nowhere near it. But he has those two important rings against Tom Brady and discounted both times. So it's like he has these moments, and don't know if you listen to the Herd, Colin Coward, his co-panelist Joy Taylor. I think she's very very clued in. But her one was, could you tell the story of the league without that player?
That's a good way to look at it.
That's a great way to look at it.
So, will Rodgers go Hall of Fame if he doesn't win this year?
Yes, he'll go Hall of Fame.
But he's only got one ring.
He's only got one ring.
And he's not in most of the stats yet.
Yes, but he will be when he retires. He's now got possibly the number one receiver in the league in Devontae Adams.
Let me rephrase it. Rodgers gets a career-ending injury. God forbid, touch wood, he doesn't. In the next 2 weeks, does he still make Hall of Fame?
Isn't tonight? Yeah.
But then why should Eli Manning not? Why should Eli Manning not if he's got 2 rings?
Because eye test. Why is Steven Gerrard better than Michael Carrick?
Yeah, fair.
Do you know that's the thing? It's eye test purely there.
Yeah.
Right, you know? It's interesting. That's a proper bar stool debate.
Need a few guineas in me now for that one.
For that one, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Perfect. Right. Well, I suppose we will move on. It's time for some fan questions. Fan questions are brought to you by our affiliate partners, usasports.co.uk. Don't just support your side, rep them. Be it on that all-important work Zoom call or on the couch for the game. Click the link in the podcast description or in our Instagram bio to browse the wide variety of sports merchandise from all 4 of America's major leagues. Major League Baseball, the NFL, the NHL, and the NBA. Our first fan question is from Dave, allegedly from Newcastle, but the accent I'm not convinced.
Hi guys, Dave here. First up, I want to say keep up the great work, and I can't wait for the new season with the podcast to begin. My question for everybody this week is, we're now halfway through the Premier League season, and we actually look like we have a title race on our hands. So what I want to know is, who are you backing to win the league? And secondly, who do you think is going to finish in the top 6?
Fully loaded.
What was the first part of that?
Jordy,
what was the top
Loaded.
6? What was the first part? Who'll win the league?
So who'll
win the league and who we think will be top 6?
Well, I've nailed my colours to the mast a little bit earlier on, so I think City and Manchester take top 2 spots.
In what order?
I don't care.
well, the question is, the first question was, who do we think is going to win?
If I was to put money on it today, City for me to win the league.
Yeah, I think both. I think both.
Biased answer.
I think both Manchester teams finish top 2. My heart says Man United, but my head says Man City to win it. As a top 6, I reckon Leicester, Liverpool, Spurs, and yeah, I'd say Everton. I'd say as is.
Everton. I can't see Everton staying there.
Okay.
I see as is with United and City swapping, obviously. So City 1, United 2. We'll go Liverpool 3, Leicester 4. Spurs. And I think it's going to be a really exciting race for 6. Really exciting. Like, when you think about it, West Ham really performing. Everton are one of them. They're good weeks and bad weeks. I could see Southampton creep up.
Well, let me tell you something, and I don't like to call out our fans But Dave from Newcastle there has missed the most intriguing part of the season, speaking as an Arsenal fan. The race for ninth. I mean, I know Villa have got them games in hand, but I think we could really, down the stretch. No, for me, I actually am going to say something. I kind of agree with this, but I think a little bit differently. I think one of the Manchester, I don't know which, I think it's going to be City. I think it's going to be Leicester in second. They're playing real consistent football. I think Liverpool third and United fourth is what I think. I just think United are going to run out of steam. I think it's a season too soon under Ole. I
was actually just going to say.
I think United's best players in this stretch have been Paul Pogba and Luke Shaw. I wouldn't rely on either.
What about Fernandes?
Yeah, well, sorry. But I mean,
he is
the most improved player. Sorry.
Yeah, he is. Fernandes is world class.
Take away the penalties, though.
Yeah, he's getting a bit of stick for not showing up in the big games, and this is kind of don't get me wrong. I'm delighted Man United are top. I wasn't expecting that at the start of the season, particularly after fucking match day 6. They'd already lost 3 games.
I don't think Ole
was expecting it either. I don't think the fans were expecting it. But yeah, he's kind of being criticised for not turning up in the big games. And like I said, this is kind of my issue with United of this season versus last season. They're picking up the points, but they're 2-2 against Leicester, 0-0 against Liverpool, 0-0 against Chelsea, 0-0 against City. Last year they done the double over Leicester, City and Chelsea and picked a point up off Liverpool and 4 points off Spurs. If you really want to be challenging for the title and fucking, pulling away from second, third and fourth, it's those big games that you do need to be kind of winning in. It's as simple as that. Any fan would agree, I'd say.
I don't know about that. Well, the problem that Arsenal have had over the last number of years, and the problem that United had last year, is they couldn't get themselves up for the small games.
Yeah.
Any player worth their salt can get themselves up for the big games. It's getting up for Newcastle away on a Tuesday night midweek fixture, and that's where I think the better sides always find a way to eke out the results, and that's what United have done. You look at they scored quite late on against Burnley, scored relatively late on against Fulham.
Yeah,
do you know it's those
1999.
Want a better phrase, gimpy fixtures.
Ones at the bottom half. I mean, even last season, they, apart from getting all those great results against the top teams, beaten by West Ham, drew with Aston Villa, beaten by Crystal Palace, 2 draws against Wolves, beaten by Newcastle, beaten by Burnley at home.
Doc, is there any value in crowds not being in the ground for United?
Do you know what?
Because I would say that if crowds were in, Ole would have been gone after the first 4 or 5 games.
Under fan pressure, probably it's a we'll never know kind of thing. Do you know, it's one of those what ifs and buts questions.
Yeah, in addition, and this is something that is probably a bit tinfoil hat-ish, but it's something I'm very concerned about with American ownership in the Premier League. You look at this year for the Glazers, it was all about Tom Brady and Tampa. I think Ole would have been let.
Yeah.
Run United into the ground or do whatever. I don't think they had obviously they know what's going on in Manchester, obviously, whatever, and there's people reporting into them, but I wonder if with American ownership over English Premier League clubs, if the drive is there to be fully focused on bettering those clubs. And that's something I query about United in the last few years. I query about ourselves and the Kroenke.
I was going to say, are you worried? Are you worried?
I am worried for the simple fact that the policy in terms of contracts seems to have changed. And if you look at the LA Rams, they're in a serious spot at bother because their cap space is a mess next season. Denver Nuggets, I think, are actually coming to a similar juncture as well. It seems as if Stan Kroenke, thanks to his wife, has that Walmart money. I think the contracts they sign are actually terribly managed and poor from a team growth and sustainability side of things. So it's something I would have fears over, Stan Kroenke, especially when you look at some of the moves. Look, I agree with what he did believe it or not, I do actually agree with what he did with the staff sackings in the middle of the first lockdown of COVID, because he got rid of people like Pat Rice, who'd been there 12 years. What was his job? 12 years since he'd last coached. So what was his role? Like, you know, that type of thing. But yeah, I think Tampa Tom might have been a way off a thing of helping Ole this year.
Okay.
With the pressure, I know the fans could also be a factor. I think there's a load of small factors that.
Yeah, like, it's just what I said about Lennon earlier on. I think if fans are in the grounds, those decisions are probably made a little bit earlier, so they get a little bit more leeway that fans aren't in the ground because maybe the board or the owners aren't seeing it as prevalent. Possibly. Again, a little bit tinfoil hatty. I
think for me with the fans, I think it just means there's more pressure on the board to make the decision, but it depends on the board's stance. If they're on the fence with someone and they get the fan pressure, then it makes the decision a lot more easier. But if they believe this is the man to bring us forward, we're going to stick with him come hell or high water, the fans are irrelevant, effectively. If they believe that they have the right man for the job and it's going to take time, I don't.
As an Arsenal fan, would you be worried about where they finish this year? Like, be it 9th, 10th, 11th?
No. It's all about getting rid of some contracts. Like, I would say signing Aubameyang was a big mistake last year. I said at the time, I was like, we should sell him now. He's got 6 months in the contract. Coming to his age, we're not going to get better value from him than now. I'm delighted we got rid of Ozil. I think that's finally confirmed this morning. He signed with Fenerbahce. But there's so many more contracts to get rid of. We seem to be getting a bit more ruthless though. I mean, I think Socrates' contract was just terminated during the week as well, out of the blue. We've some terrible contracts in the club, and it all stems from when Wenger started breaking the contract policy. I think he broke it on Theo Walcott of all people, and that coincided with the Stan Kroenke taking over the majority stakeholders and getting your man. Oh, his name escapes me. He's over AC Milan now. Who's the other majority stakeholder? The name escapes me anyway. But yeah, look, interesting, brilliant question there from Dave. Fully loaded, dodgy accent, but we'll take it. We
got a fan question in on Instagram from Desperate Dano. Apparently relation of bad lingo.
Sliding in
the DMs. Basically, and obviously to all listeners, we do encourage questions, be they voice or written. Send them in on a postcard or call us. So yeah, the fan question is, it's in regards to McGregor fighting last night, and Desperate Dan wants to know, had McGregor have moved to the US after he broke into the UFC 6 years ago, instead of training with guys who loses in Brave MMA all of the time, or a guy that's never had a pro MMA fight, or injured athletes, or had he been in the States basically training with elite athletes, would we see a different Conor McGregor now 6 years on? So I suppose in relation to the guys, I think it's in regards to Keane Cowley being the brave fighter, I'm guessing, the injured possibly Dylan Dennis, who obviously hasn't been part of a camp in a while, and Sheriff, that guy Sheriff, who hasn't, I don't think, had a pro MMA fight. So I think they're all kind of in around sparring partners. So would we see a different Conor McGregor today had he dedicated his life to it and moved across the US 6 years ago?
It's in, like, on the whole Conor McGregor fight last night, I don't want to have a post-mortem for someone who's been knocked out for the first time in their career.
Particularly when Berrick's not here.
Particularly when Berrick's not here. What I would say is, the thing about this bringing up the sparring partners, I'm kind of like, there is, say in pugilism historically, there is fantastic sparring partners that never fought. They know how to spar, and they bring out the best of it. So bringing up a sparring partner's professional career, there's arguments for sparring against the best of the best, but then there's also arguments that no, training with someone who knows what they're doing and knows how to get the best out of you is probably the best way to train. In addition, Conor McGregor was kind of the first one through the wall with MMA in this country, like as in UFC and really to be a huge name in the UFC. I know there's other people get through. So part of me would like him to stay in the country to grow the sport, because it's a real up and coming sport. I don't know if I think he may. I think what we saw last night, and it's, again, no postmortems here or whatever. Hopefully he bounces back. I do think it might have been the result of a lack of activity, a greater focus elsewhere, be it proper 12, be it some of the out of the octagon incidents he's had over the last 5 years, say. COVID didn't help. He fought Cerrone in January of 2020. He should have maybe had 2 or 3 fights last year. I think he needs to go back to the drawing board and pick 2 winnable fights, easily winnable fights, and maybe 1 big name a la Justin Gaethje or Tony Ferguson to round out the year. I think he needs to get some, and he probably needs to do 4 fights this year because he lost, and he's lost early in the year. So I think if he could pick out, and I don't know these names, like they're not rolling off my tongue because I'm a casual fan of UFC and MMA, but I think if he got 2 fights, progressively getting better each time, with a view to fighting Justin Gaethje, because I think ultimately his legacy will forever be scarred because he's beaten Poirier. He'll probably fight Poirier again. He needs that redemption fight at Khabib.
I think, he's won one with Diaz and he's won one with Poirier. Poirier pretty much said last night he won't be fighting Michael Chandler for the belt, so Dana can go and forget about that one. But Dana made an interesting comment about he thinks that Poirier and McGregor should be the fight for a vacated title, which I can't really agree with because McGregor needs to prove himself in that weight class.
And that's why I'm looking for the volume of fights this year, I think. Because
I think Nate probably should be his next fight, but Nate's not. I don't think Nate will get to 155. So I don't know how that works because we had a conversation off air that we don't really know how rankings works in the UFC. It's kind of one of them things that I'm not sure anyone can fully understand ever.
I'd say Barry could be able to fill you and tell you out. Like I think we're all casual fans of MMA and stuff. It just, to me, it seems a bit. Conor McGregor's last 6 fights in the UFC, he's 3 wins, 3 losses. They're spread out over a period of time. I don't know how long it was between. When did he fight Khabib? Was it 2017?
It was March 2018. Is ringing a bell for some reason.
I'm not sure.
Anyway, it was a significant period of time between Khabib and Cowboy
Cerrone. Loco.
And then COVID hit, and he didn't fight again for the rest of 2020.
With regards to the question, though,
so
right, I do understand what Dangerous Dan was saying here, because you look at the sparring partners, and although he maybe the right, we do want to keep him obviously in the country and whatever, and I'm not a McGregor fan, I wouldn't really defend him. I don't agree with his out of the ring kind of antics, if you want to call it that. I would definitely get up to watch his fights, just because you know he is the draw, he's Irish, so you do want it. But I have noticed people to kind of fall away. In particular, like my missus would have, up until the Cerrone fight, would have got up with me and watched fights, and now she's like, because of everything in papers, like I know alleged things in papers, and kind of the antics around the whole Khabib time, with kind of racial and religious slurring and stuff like that. It's just like, no, I don't have time for him. So the last 2 fights she hasn't, right? So I'm sure there's a population of that type of person as well. So his draw, and then losing on top of that, is probably coming away a little bit. But he has so much money now. Why not invest in people, like you say, professional sparrers? People go fighting on the early card in the UFC are getting $8,000 a fight. Like, you know, sparrers make more than that. Like if you go in and spar for McGregor, you're probably making a lot more than that. But like he's sparring lads that are wearing their €900 Candy Goose jackets and their €500 runners and still looking for a stream on fight night. You know what I mean? Like, just lads, like just invest in someone from the States. Come on over, 5-6 lads, wherever it is. He has the money to do it, and set up your little bubble or your little camp. Be it here or I know in Portugal, wherever you want to do it. But like, invest in yourself. You've got that money. He's invested in all these nutritionists and fast programs and all this sort of stuff. So just, I think that's what has to be done. And like you said, he needs to get a couple of wins under the belt before any kind of title fight. Dustin is there on merit. Like, he's deserved it. Over the last kind of since that McGregor knockout, actually, to be fair, over the last 6 years, he's deserved to be there.
Yeah, I mean, arguably Poirier fought McGregor too early in his career in 2014, like arguably, because it could have been a great. And they have a lot of respect for each other there. That was one thing I would say though. With this fight week, I was kind of on the fence about this fight, as in like interest level. But they were relatively respectful towards each other, which I think made it easier for me to watch and not cringe.
You'd cringe if you were McGregor looking back, wouldn't you? Going, well, he said he was going to do it in 60. He kind of changed that. I know if you're a fighter, you do have to big up yourself, because if you go in there in a weak state of mind, God knows what could happen to you.
Every fighter in the world says they're going to knock them out in the first round, whether it's MMA or whether it's pugilism. They always say, "Yeah, I'm going to knock him out. I'm going to knock him out. I'm going to knock him out. I'm going to knock out." How many professional boxing fights do you see knockouts these days? And how many times do you hear, "I'm going to knock him out. I'm going to knock him out. I'm going to knock him out."
The last little thing I'll touch on just on it is, are we seeing a little bit of Mike Tyson in this? I know I was watching Sports Center last night after the fight, and there was they had tweets coming in and stuff, and they were kind of saying there is shadows or echoes of Mike Tyson, that he had a very, very good early career, and kind of outside the ring got on top of him maybe a little bit, and he kind of fought, is McGregor in danger, I suppose, is probably the best way of terminology to put it. Like, is he in danger of falling into
biting someone's ear
What's
off?
that?
Biting someone's ear off. Geez, I don't know. Mike Tyson as an athlete is probably on my Mount Rushmore in terms of athletes. Watch his early fights. There is no scarier man than Mike Tyson in those fights. When he just comes in, Tupac's playing, he just went short, and he just pulverizes people. It's like this is gonna sound real American, but it's like inhumane. Some of the people that he like what he did to them. Like, it's. I think Mike Tyson had the potential to be. But that's the thing to us. But maybe it is. Yeah, maybe McGregor and Tyson are. They had so much promise early on, but I don't think Conor's done by any shot. I think it's a huge shot. It's a huge damage to his reputation, but I think he can bounce back if he gets his head right.
Yeah, it's just picking the fights now is crucial.
But either way, I mean, if it's a PPV, he's still going to be getting serious dollar for it regardless. Do you know?
Yeah,
not that he's always motivated by money, or the organisation themselves are motivated by money, but
I think the organisation
more so. Yeah, but that name McGregor is always going to be, I suppose, a big draw regardless.
I think he's probably in danger of losing a little bit of that, though, in terms of over the last 6 years actually having his own selection of kind of what he wants. I think he's probably like.
What I would say though is, Khabib fought Gaethje, and it was in Abu Dhabi, and it was on at 8 o'clock Irish time. Dubai is 4 hours ahead, so it was 12 o'clock, right, to suit European audiences. Conor McGregor fought just probably this morning at 5:30, which was 9:30 in the morning.
Think about the undercard.
How damaging! Like, it was. This isn't by no means an excuse. I'm just kind of wondering, like, at what point are you as Dana White running a risk of ruining the product? As in, athletes are just not performing at their best because they're jet lagged, and now you're making them get up at 4 o'clock in the morning. Because I'd say it takes about 5 hours to get ready for a fight in terms of up, breakfast, eat meal, all just and whatever. So, like, at what point is that detrimental to athletes performing at their best? Do you know what I mean? Like, you'd never say FA Cup final or Champions League final is between Real Madrid and Man City, and we know we have millions of Real Madrid and Man City fans in the US. We're going to play it at midnight.
Well, midnight is a bit. They do play games at midnight in Spain, to be fair.
Well, we're going to play it at 3 o'clock.
I know your point, yeah.
Yeah, I see the point.
Do you know what I mean? We'd never.
Yeah, because no matter if I know they were quarantined over there for 2 weeks, or whatever, but no matter how long you quarantine for, you're still getting up at midnight for a fight at 5 a.m. or whatever if you're on the undercard. Like, it's bizarre. But I think he did mention in the conference about coming back in June, July. I think this is possibly for this year the end of the Abu Dhabi experiment. Just because the way Biden has come into the States and stuff he's looking at, I'd say it's probably going to be based in Vegas or Florida now for the next. You'd have to think.
Yeah. I know the Hard Rock Hotel in Florida seems to be getting a lot of the WBC and the boxing fights, so I don't know if there's something, the potential there. I think Florida's laws are a bit looser, I think. I think
I don't know about that.
Yeah.
Tiger King's in prison, isn't he?
He was Oklahoma,
Oh, he
you know?
was, yeah. We'll just edit that
He
out,
was the Midwest.
Midwest,
That's,
that's a different kettle of
he's
fish.
he's not in prison because he broke the laws. He's in prison because of his sexuality.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
But he is, though. Oklahoma, that Midwest, you know what they're like. Yeah, look, on that sour note, anything else to add, lads, before we...
No, I think that's what it's a question that we might pick back up with Beric next week and get his opinion.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean,
it's just about to say that.
Unfortunately, he's missing in action, but he will.
He did not buy tickets for 10 grand in Abu Dhabi. We just want to put that out there. He's not. He is on the continent of Era.
He's not secretly an influencer in Abu Dhabi. Okay. Well, considering Beric is absent, Doctor, for the first time this season, take us away.
Yeah, good evening, hello, good morning, good afternoon, and good
Sláinte.
evening, should I say, and Sláinte. Thank you very much for tuning in to the Busted Barstools Season 3, Episode 1. I've been the Doctor, he's been the Sasquatch, as hairy as ever, and Westlife himself, the coach, who is gagging for a haircut. Thank you very much. We've been the Busted Barstools. Hope you've enjoyed it. Listen, follow us on Instagram, share it with your friends. Don't be afraid to send us in a fan question. I would like to apologise in advance as I will be absent next week, but I will send in a little segment that the guys can play. So thank you very much. Good evening, and have a very enjoyable and safe week ahead. Signing off, we're the Barstools. Good night.